Hey everyone, so excited to have Shira Page here today and have her share some of her experience as a mom herself, but also with Bobbie, which was really thrust into the spotlight. I remember several years ago in the formula shortage, Bobbie was already on the scene, but things got really intense. And I remember some great articles and interviews with the team at the time. So with that, Shira, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself, how you got to Bobbie, and share a little bit about the work that you all are doing at Bobbie today.
Yeah, awesome. I am Shira Page. I am a nurse practitioner by training. So that was kind of how I kicked off my career. For 5 years or so, I was doing endocrinology, which is hormone health. And a lot of my focus was on women both during pregnancy with gestational diabetes or thyroid issues, and then after pregnancy, oftentimes with thyroid or blood sugar concerns. And I'll try to abbreviate it as much as possible because my career journey is pretty twisty turvy, but ultimately after having kids, I ended up trying to navigate away from full-time clinical care and wanted to expand my horizon. So I went briefly kind of onto the pharma side of things, doing clinician education. And at the same time, I became a certified lactation counselor. So that's someone who, it's like a shorter training to become a lactation support person than an IBCLC, which is what a lot of people are familiar with. And I actually opened a virtual practice during COVID, supporting parents, which was a really fantastic experience. And then I ended up at Bobbie after, I guess it's been 2 years now. So time flies in the startup world, as I'm sure you know, but definitely not a traditional career path. And a lot of it was very influenced by Parenthood.
Yes, indeed. And so let's hop right in. I think it was April of, was it 22, was sort of not peak, maybe in some cases peak chaos, but that time period was a very scary one for parents who relied on formula. What was that journey like for you coming into the organization at that time, and how connected were you with the insanity prior to the interview process?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because I actually did not, I had a baby who was using some formula, but I had not been an exclusively or predominantly formula feeding parent at that time. So I was not aware of some of the extremes that parents were going to, like driving hours to find formula or being in a complete panic. I had purchased some Bobbie and was trying a few brands to supplement, but my baby was already, I think she was 9-10 months at the time. So I guess I really wasn't aware of it. A little bit later in the shortage is when it started to be like briefly all over the news. And even you had the president talking about the formula shortage. It was becoming a national crisis. But when I first started interviewing at Bobbie, I had very, very, very little knowledge of that, and definitely zero knowledge of the infant formula supply chain and how basically two big companies kind of have a monopoly over that industry. So that was all new information to me. Definitely a lot of catch up and industry knowledge to gain in the first few months at Bobbie. It was a really magical time to come into the organization because I saw everything that they were doing to try to support their current customers. Bobbie really focused at that time on making sure that parents that were using their product would not have any interruption in the supply of their product. And that was very, very inspiring. But it was definitely a heartbreaking time to see parents who sometimes were still kind of really in it, feeling ambivalent about their feeding decisions or having a lot of guilt and shame around them, then having this extra layer of inaccessibility applied to that.
Yeah. When Bobbie launched, the approach, the angle was, healthy, all natural. How does Bobbie position itself today in comparison to alternatives on the market?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I would say before the formula shortage, there was this concept where parents were unhappy with the options available in the United States. So what they would do is they would go online and they would import formula from European countries. And, we do that all the time with other products. You might get some chocolate that you like from Germany, no big deal. But infant formula is a highly regulated product. And so it's really important that we have knowledge of the supply chain. And when you purchase a product, if there's a recall, you find out about that. And you also know that that package is exactly what you are purchasing. It's never been tampered with. And so those products that people were ordering, that was technically like a black market. They really are not supposed to be allowed in the United States, and it can put babies at risk. And so that is one of the motivators for Bobbie's birth, is that it was meeting that need for parents who felt like there wasn't a good option for them here in the US. Now, when the formula shortage happened, a lot of that landscape changed because they allowed products to come in from other countries so that we could have enough infant formula to feed all babies. And I won't get into the details, but it's kind of evened out. There's some products that have stayed and are being allowed to stay long term from other countries. And then some things that are kind of coming off the market as we come out of that shortage. So now it's really about optionality for parents, and that Bobbie is, with some other companies, creating shelves that have a lot of different brands on them. And so though parents can figure out what's important to them, and then they can go to the store or research and decide what is most important and how they feed their baby and make an informed decision without having to just be funneled into, a handful of brands.
Yeah, that's an incredible journey to be on, and especially for you to hop in at that point in time. So thank you for shedding a little bit of light there. So talking briefly about Bobbie's product, at Harbor, Kelly Brown is our director of nursing. We've been very forward in our guidance that fed is best. Infants need their nutrition, and they need to get it in the way that parents are best able to provide it for them. Before becoming a parent myself, I had no knowledge of how intense the discussions were around nursing and formula and finding the balance between the two. How has Bobbie been able to really, I think, lead the charge in helping, I don't want to say normalize because it is very normal, but helping the conversation be more healthy around fed is best and formula is food, and making sure that kids get the nutrition that they need in the best way that they are able to?
Yeah. So before I came to Bobbie, and I would say before I had my second baby, I was very much on the extreme. I was part of what exactly this conversation should not be, which is that I had, like many parents or pre-parents, a very black and white thinking about feeding. Yes. That there are breastfed babies and that there are formula-fed babies, and that there's not really a lot of in between, and that any amount of formula pushes you into that formula category and means that you have kind of failed at breastfeeding. And that's how the conversation is amongst healthcare professionals. Sometimes we see in parent groups, there's a lot of debate and kind of which side are you on as conversations. And so one of the things that drew me to Bobbie was that it's very focused on this idea that it's not black and white, and that it is a spectrum, that parents should be allowed to make decisions that work for them, and that parents should feel good about nurturing their babies, whatever place on that spectrum they exist. One is not better than the other. It's just a journey that's going to look different for everyone. Yeah. And that should be celebrated because it's such hard work, no matter which way you do it.
Right. That's a very healthy perspective. Thanks for sharing. So you are a parent yourself. You are in this parenting space. Let's talk some, practical tips and things that have been helpful for you and that you've come across in your world. So let's first talk about, in the as parents are getting ready to be first-time parents, what are a couple things that you look back and say, either I wish I'd known, or this is what I tell my friends as they begin their journey themselves?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's always so hard because so many things come to mind.
Sure.
But one thing you have to think about, in patient counseling and when you're talking to friends who are about to be parents, is that it can be really overwhelming. So kind of finding those really small nuggets that can root someone in feeling confident in knowledge is most important. And then also that information is not always the best gift that you can give someone, especially in this world we exist in where you are continually being inundated with information, oftentimes very conflicting information. I think what people really need is support. And I know that's it's become trite. We say it all the time, like parents need more support, moms need more support, but we don't often know how to lay out an actual support system and to do the work to create that maybe ahead of having a baby. Oftentimes people are reading information and going to classes and following influencers and buying thousands of products, but they might not be making sure that they have a list of therapists that they can call, or figuring out, who are the friends that I can text if I'm just having a crisis and need someone to come over.
Yeah.
So I think prioritizing support systems, knowing that you're going to need help. That was really hard for me because I was a healthcare professional and I had a pretty good support network. So to me, I was like, yeah, there's no way, especially with my second baby, there was no way I was going to need to see a lactation consultant. Why would I? I had all the information. So just really creating that village that we don't naturally have.
That's wonderful. Very, very good piece of advice. So let's now switch to, you're bringing your children home, first time, second time. When it comes to sleep, it's hard to come by in those first few weeks and months. What were some of the things that you did, or in hindsight, you wish maybe you had done to establish those healthy sleep habits early and make sure that you and your children were getting that sleep that you also desperately need?
Yeah, I'm kind of going to recycle the answer to the last question. I was thinking about sleep ahead of our call, knowing it would come up, and I had really challenging sleep experiences, particularly my first. I came from a background with, I came from a family kind of, my mom was very crunchy and she was like, oh yeah, babies just sleep, very anti-sleep training. And, it's interesting thinking about that. Breast is best, first formula conversation. It's very similar with sleep. It's a lot of sleep training is either the most evil thing ever, or it is what everyone needs to do. And really, it's very similar that parents need to be allowed to choose what works for them. For me, in terms of sleep with my first, I just felt like there was something wrong with my baby or with me because she was such a bad sleeper. And so I took some books out from my postpartum support group and I followed some influencers and I was Googling late at night, and it was so confusing because everyone was saying different things and I didn't know what the right answer was. And it went on like this for a really long time where I felt like I was playing whack-a-mole. You try one thing, maybe it would work. And it wouldn't work. Then you would switch gears and try something else. And ultimately, we ended up going to a sleep clinic and seeing a sleep professional. And I don't think the advice that she gave was particularly groundbreaking, but having that one person who I could just say, okay, I'm just going to do what they say. If it doesn't work, we're going to go back to them. And now we have someone that we can turn to support us, was totally game changing. And it's funny because I did the exact same thing with my second. I didn't have a sleep consultant. We kind of just winged it with some of the knowledge I had from my first, Googling schedules. And, ended up 9 months into our journey seeing a sleep consultant and working with one, because it just gives you that level of confidence that you need.
Yeah.
And you just sometimes need that level of support.
Yeah, that's everyone has their own journey, but I do remember when my wife and I worked with, one of our advisors at Harbor is Melissa O'Neill. She's built an incredible company called Newborn Nightingales that has night nurses and night nannies that go to people's homes. We were able to work with one of her, she calls them Nightingales. And I found that the advice, we'd gotten nuggets from different books and there were similar things, but having that one person that we're just going to work with you and we're going to partner this together. The second piece that I didn't realize but I found so important for my wife was she had advice from this person and this book and that blog and this relative and that relative, and all the noise coming in from so many angles made it very hard to navigate. And it's part of why we've been so intent with Harbor in launching our remote night nanny service is the ability to have that expert, and they are with you driving and helping problem solve, rather than, sure, here's another blog article or here's another book or here's a very, this Instagram influencer has 1,000 million followers and they say this is the way to do it. The ability to shut out the rest of the world and work with one point of view was very, very productive. So how are your children sleeping now? They're older now. Are they good sleepers these days, or it's still hit or miss?
The 5.5-year-old is a great sleeper. The 3-year-old is hit or miss. Yeah. But you know what? It's also kind of, I just have a different perspective on it now. Sure. I feel like I was constantly trying to fix things and constantly judging the situation that we were in during those first few years of parenthood, and even the first year with my first. Like, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with my kid? Like, is this bad? Is this gonna set them up for bad habits? And ultimately they ebb and flow, and you can sleep train at 6 weeks and have a perfect sleeper, and then things can totally change, a few months later. So I think taking some of that judgment out is also important, and realizing it's just a bit of a wild ride.
Yeah, we parents are fond of catastrophizing and drawing this night or this week or this month out through, this is what they're going to be like into college. And kids find a way of continuing to surprise us with how things evolve. So for anyone who is a parent listening, I think we can all empathize. And for all of those who are coming up behind us with kids on the way, just know that things will change more times than you can possibly imagine. Shira, this was wonderful. Maybe in closing, what are you most excited about on the Bobbie front over the course of the next 6-12 months?
Oh gosh. Well, it's hard because a lot of it is under lock and key. So It's hard to talk about the future, but I would say on my end, leading our medical channel and kind of growing in the healthcare space, I'm just so excited to continue to focus on clinician education. We find there's so many gaps around infant nutrition amongst healthcare professionals, even those closest to mother and baby care. And so the most gratifying part of my job with healthcare professionals, being the people I interact with most, is continuing to do that clinician education. So excited to expand to new topics, maybe even sleep in the future. But that definitely gets me very excited.
Fantastic. Shira, thank you for the time today, and look forward to leading on your insights, especially around nutrition in the months and years ahead.
Awesome. Thank you.